Hi there, my name's Steve, and you are listening and tuned into the Go Football podcast. So this is the podcast that talks all about grassroots football. Whether you are a parent, player, referee, just got to love for the game, sit tight, you're in the right place. So this week we will be talking about something that affects every single grassroots club. Doesn't often get talked about enough, but we will be talking about, do grassroots coaches get enough support? Because, behind every team, there's usually a coach, often a volunteer, often giving up their time, their evenings, their weekends, planning, prepping, but do they get enough support? Well, let's not wait any longer. Let's cue the whistle. Let's get into it. So big welcome back. Listen, this week we're going to be talking about grassroots coaches and do they get enough help and support? Because, we look what they do. They give up their evenings, their weekends, they give up their energy, just to help kids play football. And they are doing a great job, by the way. Any of the ones that's doing this voluntarily, they're honestly, they're doing an amazing job. I know that we pay subs in, but that's for equipment, that's for kits, that's for pitch rentals, paying referees, all the rest of it. Look, any of that money that you're paying to subs is not going into a coach's pocket. And if it is, it's very, very few. It's not really in the game, but do they need and do they actually need some more support? If we look at the realities of grassroots coaching, what support that there currently is at the moment, where things like fall short, maybe what could be done better at clubs and for teams. There's often going to be a number of different things in there, really, because, with grassroots coaches, a lot of the time, especially the very youngest ones as well, it's maybe a couple of dads of the kids that are playing, especially at the very youngest ages, that kind of get thrown into it as well. It's kind of go on a course, get a DBS check done if they've not already got one as well. Here's a first aid certificate, go on this course and do it online. And here's your level 1. By the way, you need to log on to a webinar for the next month to do all these things. And then, off you go. You're going to be off you go, and often sometimes even left, aren't they, on their own, really? So, we'll have a look, really. I mean, look, most grassroots coaches, I've already said, they're volunteers as well. The fact that they're crossing over into helping youth sports as well, it's great. But, I think if you estimate like the amount of people in grassroots that are involved in it in some way, almost everyone is unpaid. They're giving up their time as well. So no salary for it at all. Time, giving up their time. They're trying to balance in work, they're trying to balance family, and then they're adding coaching in there as well, which, for a lot of coaches, that's pretty hard. It's not like we're just sat around all day, every day, just, I've got some time now, I'll get my coach's board out and I'll do this, that and the other, ready for the Wednesday night's training or ready for the game at the weekend or anything like that. They're putting a lot of their spare time into it. So much so that if you are the partner of a grassroots coach, you're almost involved in there too, because you will see it on the evenings, the weekends, you'll see it all the way through. And again, parents, I appreciate, you see this too, don't you? Because, you're trying to juggle maybe sometimes multiple kids in multiple locations or teams or activities and things like that. And then you've got weekends and then you're trying to sort all those things out. But with grassroots coaches, they're expected to do a lot of things, plan sessions, manage teams as well, communicate with parents, deal with match days, which, sometimes match days are pretty stressful days for coaches. A lot of people just think you just turn up and that's it. But, emails come out before, you need to communicate with your team. And often then you've got to sort out all the little bits and pieces of like, what do we need that day? Where's parking? All the rest of it there. Everyone's going to be contacting them. But then they also need to support players and player development too. So look, they're doing a lot of different things. So look, we're looking at really, where do they get, well, firstly, how do they have so much spare time? I'm sure if they look back, a lot of coaches will realise that they probably didn't have the time to do it in the first place, or got conned into it thinking it was just going to be 2 hours a week, an hour for the game and an hour's training. And then now they've realised that half their life is revolving around a grassroots football team too. So, but, look, grassroots football, obviously it's massive. There's millions of kids play youth sports all the way through as well. I'd argue that football has got to be one of the most popular, right, in the country for activities. I mean, look, dance is going to be pretty high on there, I would think too. But as far as sports go, football's got to be the most popular, I would have thought. There's loads of people going on there. Now, do we need to have multiple coaches in teams? Does that give a bit of extra support as well? Because if we don't have these volunteers and these coaches that are going doing all these extra things that they probably weren't doing before, may have not had any experience of. Look, some coaches won't have had experience of talking to kids since they were kids. apart from their own, and now all of a sudden someone's gone, oh, great, we're just going to drop off 10 kids at you or 15 kids with you. That can be a bit of a challenge as well. I think that there's a number of different things, like research has shown that like volunteer recruitment and retention is one of the biggest challenges that we probably have in grassroots football. And, I think that maybe one of the reasons why the retention is so poor a lot of the time is probably lack of support. That can be definitely one of the reasons why a lot of coaches are maybe not that they're struggling, but just a little bit of help and a little bit of support as well can help them. So where do we kind of fall down in some of these areas as well? Like if we break it down each stage at a time, really, I suppose that time pressure, coaches working full-time, managing family life, and then coaching on top, very, very hard as well, isn't it? Because there's very little time for things like planning, learning, and reflection. It's really hard for them to be able to do that because most coaches are so focused on looking after your children and the children that they've got and the grassroots players that they've got. Sometimes they don't have time to look back and reflect on what maybe they are doing. And sometimes that can get picked up by parents, and parents may say something. The coach might be a bit defensive with that because, again, lack of support probably doesn't help them too much. What about education and guidance or something like that? And like, the education side of it, it's great that some of the counties put on those CPD days and hours that you can go to. And honestly, they're great. If you can ever go to one of those, the last one that I went to was at Seagrave, which is where Leicester City train. Really, really good. I love like connecting with like other coaches and talking to them about, their teams and what's going on. And also just getting known by the grassroots community in the local areas too. But often you'll get coaches who'll do one course and that's it. A lot of the time they don't get the ongoing support, they don't get the ongoing education. Sometimes they might even feel a bit unsure about what they're doing. They might turn up as well, because learning doesn't stop after you've got your FA level 1 or your UEFA C or UEFA B licenses or anything like that. Although if you go on to you getting your B license, generally you're probably staying in the game for a little bit longer because the amount of spaces there are to go and get that at the minute is just ridiculous. There's hardly any, which does give that other question as well, is like, are they getting enough support? Because if we can get on all these courses, that'd be great for them. I do think that somewhere where we could take some pressure off and give some support as well is maybe from some parents, because coaches are dealing with things like the expectations of parents. They're dealing with sideline comments, they're dealing with disagreements, and that's not helpful or supporting a coach who's a volunteer, who's given up their time, who's given up their energy, who's given up everything to go and help your children become better footballers. Look, we have to say that sometimes we've all looked at a coach and gone, you're not a coach, but they turn up. And what I mean by they're not a coach is they're not naturally a football coach. I've met some people that are great football coaches. When did you get into football? Oh, about a year ago. Why? Because there was no one else to run the team. So I just got really involved. I'm like, well, you've got great attitude for it, so you maybe should have been doing it before. But often they just get left alone as well. And I think that sometimes, how can we support and what kind of support can we give to a grassroots coach as well? Maybe a bit of recognition, because a lot of the time there is a lack of recognition for grassroots coaches. In fact, I've had an email that's come through today just from the county saying, would you like to recommend anyone or nominate anyone for the Grassroots Awards this year? And I'm definitely going to do that. There's two people that I've got in mind that I want to, put forward for that. But rarely do coaches get any recognition. Do they get any feedback? And do they get any appreciation? Just saying thanks at the end of a session. Oh, thanks. See you next week. Yeah, it's great that you say that. And I understand that is the appreciation. But, sometimes it's nice to just say to a coach, oh, do you know what? I can definitely see that they're improving. It's great what you're doing. And just spending maybe, and I'm talking 30 seconds, 1 minute of extra conversation is great for a coach to hear sometimes. It's great for anyone to hear, really, isn't it? But, without doing that, and over time, coaches do get burnt out. And, some help and support will go a long way. If you look at why coaches walk away, I'd say the biggest issue really is that they're not feeling supported. They just leave. And when coaches leave, what happens to a football team? Yeah, that's right as well. Teams fold, don't they? Teams fold. How many teams are folded because a coach has left because they haven't been or felt like they've got the support that they maybe need or want or could have had or could have got. And that means that players are going to lose out because they're going to lose their opportunities to play in that team. They're going to have to go and find another team. Then they're going to have to start again and make new friends and do all the rest of it, which is not necessarily a bad thing. They've got to go and make new friends. That's great social skills for them. But then clubs start to struggle. Because if we have, let's say that we have a club that's maybe got, like, let's say 10 teams, and then we've got 3 coaches that leave and no one's ready to take those over, then that's 3 clubs or 3 teams down. That club's now gone from 10 to 7. They've still got to balance the books. Their insurances don't come down because there's less kids there. Their running costs for their clubhouse don't come down because there's less kids and less teams there. So a little bit of support can really, really help out those grassroots teams because, I think a lot of the time it seems like people don't care, but it is a big challenge, isn't it? Like supporting coaches. A lot of the time people that feel like they don't really care as well about grassroots coaches, and sometimes coaches feel like no one really cares about them, and they can get quite overwhelmed. And it's not really an environment for most coaches where they can feel like they can reach out to get some support, and they can feel like when they're under pressure, they can say, I'm under too much pressure. I can't really cope with everything that's going on at the moment, with the team, with everything else, with the comments, with everything else that goes along with being a grassroots coach. So what does good support look like? What could we do that is really good? So, look, I suppose for some clubs, and look, chairmans do a great job here as well, by the way. A lot of chairmen and a lot of secretaries and a lot of other people that are involved, Safeguard and Leeds, all those do a great job in helping and supporting grassroots coaches. But, I think if there was some extra courses, some ongoing learning for people as well, that would be great as well. Not just courses, but maybe just some workshops, maybe sharing ideas, mentoring. I think that sometimes when coaches from the same team are all together, that's great too, because you often don't get that. Sometimes you might see 2 or 3 teams. It might be a roll on, roll off of the same pitches. If you pitch sharing a 12 o'clock and a 2 o'clock kickoff, something like that. But often you don't get many of them that are able to see each other and see other coaches and maybe bounce some ideas off each other, or maybe talk, maybe get support, maybe just talk about how they go forward with their team and being successful, and maybe getting that help and support that they obviously probably need as well. Look, if clubs are backing their coaches, that's great. And they can also set some clear expectations with parents too. So most clubs will have a code of conduct. Now, if you're a parent and you haven't seen the code of conduct, please go and take a look at your club's code of conduct, because that'll really able to help you have like positive environments for kids as well. And also just maybe it's got some bits in there so that coaches don't feel like they're alone in there. But I think also some simple resources would probably help. Coaches don't need to have complex systems of going to find things and do things and all those kind of things. If we can make it simple and some simple ideas of, especially for, and I get it, like, a lot of chairmen and club secs are doing a lot of work anyway, but if they can give some like simple links out as well, some simple guidance as well, some practical support, maybe get the coaches together. Look, weather's nice now as well. Let's do a coaching session for the coaches. And maybe every coach can come away and just say 1 or 2 things. The thing is, with the courses, every time I've been on a CPD course, every time I've been on a coaching course or a training course or anything like that, always been able to take something out of it. Always. There's not a time or a course that I've done where I've not been able to take something out of it. So I definitely think that if it's just the coaches coaching the coaches, that'd be great. And maybe you could just get 2 or 3 coaches that are maybe more experienced to run a session for coaches for them to do, especially now it's a bit nicer weather and we've got maybe a bit more time outside and the pitches are going to be a bit cheaper because we're not all on 3G or trying to find a 3G pitch to go and play on. That'd be great. But I also think, look, parents, what can you do? Bit of appreciation to coaches goes a long way in supporting them. When we look at some of those, we look at things like a message, maybe a thank you, maybe some recognition. It definitely goes a long way for coaches, that maybe don't get to see those things or get to hear any of those. But I mean, look, the reality again is that, look, grassroots football is going to rely on volunteers. If we upset these volunteers and we don't support them, then volunteers, they don't need to hang around. They can just be off whenever they want to as well. If you want better players and better environments, better experiences, then we need to support the people that are delivering it. That's coaches. That's the coaches that are there. They're the ones delivering the sessions. And the more help support through courses, training, education, maybe it's even just emails and videos of things going around. Maybe it's a podcast that coaches can listen to go and get a bit of confidence, enjoyment again, and start working on their development a little bit. Especially if it's passively, like things like podcasts and things like that are great if it's coaches talking about how to support someone, because often they can be done whilst other things are happening, which is always really good as well. So yeah, look, can we support our coaches better? I definitely think so. I think that if we can make easier links to where they can go and get some education, and I'm not talking education as in like sit down, loads of writing or anything. Sometimes those CPD courses are great, and if there's loads of those, and I think that if the chairman and anyone can just do this now, just contact your local your local county, and they will be able to supply you with a list of dates and times when they're running CPD courses. And if they're not, just ask them, are you going to do these things as well? Is there any interest in doing it? Because if there is, they're something that's really good. But I also think sometimes supporting a coach is just a bit of recognition from the parents, from the players, from the other people that are around, because that'll go a long, long way to making sure that we don't have that retention problem with some coaches. So look, that's going to be the end of the podcast for this week as well. So what's your thoughts on grassroots coaches getting enough support? Like in some places, yes, and in some areas, probably not enough. But let us know your thoughts. You can get us on the Go Football Podcast. So you just do this by just gofootballpod@gmail.com. Come straight through to me. Obviously, you can get us on Spotify, Amazon Music, YouTube, Casterbox. You can get us on all socials, so TikTok, Facebook, Instagram. You can get us on all of those. I think Threads we're on, and Twitter as well. So yeah, you can get us on all of those. But this one has been how we can support coaches better. Just remember, what we want to do, support these coaches that are going out and doing a great job for your children. So look, until next time, it's been the Go Football Podcast. I will speak to you all next week.
While some squads are stuck in group chats listening to Keith ask when kickoff is, again, your squad is watching their own live commentary. They're watching themselves leapfrog the starting winger in the Squad Score League after a 3-assist Sunday. They're reading digital progress reports that look like they belong in the hands of a pro scout, but better, probably. Keep them keen and power your players with professional engagement. Look it up, squadgod.app.